Welcome to Lesson 3 of Module 7 on ERD rules and problem solving. I'm going to start with an important reflective question about ERD notation and business policies. How does an ERD support business policies? Lesson 3 emphasizes basic problem-solving skills to help you integrate the details of lessons in Modules 6 and 7 and overcome inertia of passive learning. The highlights of several problems will be covered in this lesson. You can find details in a document in the class website. The major objective of this lesson is to work problems to gain confidence with the ERD notation and a drawing tool such as the ER Assistant. You should be able to create entity types in one-to-many relationships, preferably using a drawing tool supporting the crow's foot notation shown in Modules 6 and 7. This problem involves an ERD containing the order and customer entity types connected by a one-to-many relationship from customer to order. For the customer entity type, you should add attributes for cust.no as the primary key, cust first name, cust last name, cust street, cust city, cust state, cust zip, and cust bal for the customer balance. For the order entity type, you should add attributes for the ord.no, that's the primary key, ord date, ord name, ord street, ord city, ord state, and ord zip. You should choose an appropriate relationship name using your common knowledge of interactions between customers and orders. Then you should define minimum cardinalities so that an order is optional for a customer and a customer is mandatory for an order. If you are using a data modeling tool that supports data type specification, you should choose appropriate data types for the attributes based on your common knowledge. This diagram shows the solution for problem 1. Because most of the solution follows directly from the problem narrative, I will not go over it in detail. The specification for an order is optional for a customer is shown by the minimum cardinality symbol of a circle, meaning 0, near the order entity type. The specification, a customer is mandatory for an order, is shown by the perpendicular line near the customer entity type, denoting a minimum cardinality of 1. All data types should be variable length character strings, that is varchar, except for cust number, ord number, and ord date. Cust number and ord number should be integer. Ord date can be either date or timestamp. You should extend the ERD from problem 1 with the employee entity type and a one-to-many relationship from employee to order. For the employee entity type, you should add attributes for employee number, the primary key, emp first name, emp last name, emp phone, emp email, emp com rate for the commission rate, and emp department name. You should choose an appropriate relationship name using your common knowledge of interactions between employees and orders. Then you should define minimum cardinalities so that an employee is optional to an order and an order is optional to an employee. After this extension, you should add a self-referencing one-to-many relationship involving the employee entity type. Choose an appropriate relationship name using your common knowledge of organizational relationships among the employees. Then define minimum cardinalities so that the relationship is optional in both directions. This diagram shows the solution for problem 2. Most of the solution follows directly from the problem narrative, so I won't review it here. The specification for an employee is optional to an order and an order is optional to an employee is shown by the circle symbol for the minimum cardinality for both sides of the takes relationship. The manages relationship represents the requirement for a self-referencing relationship involving the employee entity type. The minimum cardinalities of 0, that's the circle symbol, in both directions, represents the requirement for optional participation. All data types should be variable length character strings, varchar, except for emp.no and emp commission rate. Emp.no should be integer and emp com rate should be decimal. Now, let's wrap up Lesson 3 about problem solving using the ERD notation. The lesson covered the highlights of 2 basic problems. You can see the complete details in the website document. The major objective of working these problems is to gain confidence creating simple ERDs using an ERD drawing tool. Now let's return to the opening question about ERD notation and business policies. Business rules enforce organizational policies and promote efficient communication among stakeholders. An ERD contains important business rules represented as primary keys, relationships, and cardinalities. Primary keys support entity identification, an important requirement in business communication. Identification dependency involves an entity that depends on other entities for identification, a requirement in some business communication. Relationships indicate direct connections among units of business communication. Cardinalities restrict the number of related entities in relationships, supporting organizational policies and consistent business communication. In creating ERDs, you are participating in the development of business rules that will enforce organizational policies and promote efficient communication.